The contrast between reality and the religious moral ideal that good prospers and evil is defeated was a distressing and perplexing problem that occupied the biblical writers. The existence of evil, the suffering of the righteous, the defeat of God's chosen, all this seemed basically incompatible with certain fundamental monotheistic intuitions that God holds supreme power in the universe, that God is essentially good and just, and his providential care extends throughout creation. How can faith in such a God be upheld in the face of evil and suffering? Although all ancient cultures and modern cultures struggle with the problem of evil, it had particular poignancy for ancient Israel. In other ancient Near Eastern literatures, we find doubts about the existence of a moral order, certainly. But only in Israel does the question of evil touch on the very essence of God and the very foundation of religious faith. Paganism posits the existence of primordial evil demons or gods, and thus the existence of evil and suffering does not impugn the good gods themselves. Later religious systems that grow out of the Bible will in fact increasingly posit demons or a devil, right? Second Temple Judaism, later Rabbinic Judaism, and most especially Christianity will posit some devil to account for evil in the world. Undeserved suffering, outrageous and frustrating as it might be, can then be explained, at least by the jealousy or the caprice of the evil angels or gods or the demons or devil who are indifferent to man's fate. But in biblical religion, there is no independent evil principle, and so undeserved suffering and rampant evil impugn the goodness and justice of God himself. And biblical persons have no refuge from evil and suffering other than faith in God's justice. And if that justice is slow in coming, then despair and doubt threaten. For this reason, Israelite theodicy, I think, is charged with great pathos because the stakes are so high. If one loses faith in an essentially moral universe, one loses God. Or at least, as we saw in the book of Job, one loses a God who governs the world according to a clear moral standard. But the biblical writers don't approach the problem as philosophers or theologians might. For the philosopher, theodicy, the problem of evil is primarily a logical problem. It's a contradiction. How can a just and good God allow evil and suffering to exist in the world? And like any other logical problem, it's best solved, according to the philosophers and theologians, through the careful construction of a systematic argument. This is not the method or the approach of the biblical writers. For them, the problem is not philosophical. It is personal. It is psychological. It is spiritual. The burning question is really this: how can one sustain a commitment to Israel's God in the face of national catastrophe and personal suffering? How can one have the strength to embrace, to trust, to love this God, knowing that unpredictable suffering and chaos have struck and may again strike at any moment? And various writers from various periods add their voices to Israel's struggle to come to terms with the problem of sustaining faith in the midst of evil and suffering. The Bible's aim is not to solve the philosophical problem of theodicy, so much as it is to enable the relationship with God to survive all shocks, to make life in covenant with God a viable option despite the evil and the suffering that are experienced by the faithful. The Bible doesn't offer one single model of how to cope with this problem.